there has to be a reason why people choose to work with you over somebody else. You need to understand who are you trying to attract and how do you capitalize on what makes you different so you can go reach your goals.
Welcome to Get Unstuck and On Target, the weekly podcast that offers senior leaders insights and strategies to not only lead with confidence and vision, but also to achieve groundbreaking results. I'm your host, Mike O'Neill. I coach top-level executives on the power of ethical leadership to forge teams to be as united as they are effective. In each episode, join me for insightful conversations with leaders just like you, providing practical advice to help you get unstuck and propel you and your company forward. Let's get started. Welcome to Get Unstuck and On Target. Today, we're joined by Cary Matthews, a seasoned strategist and operations leader whose experience spans Fortune 50 companies and thriving small businesses. Cary offers a masterclass in aligning operational excellence with a compelling organizational ethos, making him a trusted resource for leaders who want to turn vision into action. As an executive coach working with senior leaders, I see every day how clarity, discipline, and adaptability are non-negotiables for sustainable success. In this episode, Cary and I dive into practical strategies that help leaders break through bottlenecks, scale with intention, and build businesses that truly thrive. This isn't just theory. It's actionable insight for leaders who demand results. So, if you're ready to elevate your leadership and achieve lasting impact, grab your pen, get comfortable, and let's rethink what's possible. Let's get unstuck and on target. Joining me today is Cary Matthews, a seasoned strategist and operations leader with a passion for empowering small businesses. Cary's academic foundation in electrical engineering and business administration from Auburn University, combined with early career experience at Fortune 500 companies, has equipped him with invaluable tools and insights. These skills now fuel his work as a certified strategy coach and a fractional COO. Through his leadership at Opal Productivity Group, Cary has made it his mission to help businesses get unstuck by crafting actionable strategies that turn visions into reality. By leveraging proven methodologies like System and Soul, he has become a trusted resource for small business owners aiming to overcome operational bottlenecks and achieve sustainable growth. Welcome, Cary.
Good morning, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's good to have you as well. Cary, you and I have had the opportunity to know each other in that we both have worked with a client together, but I've never had an opportunity to have a conversation about your specific approach to how you go about supporting businesses. I guess I have to start by saying War Eagle.
War Eagle.
But I also know that the kind of work that you do, you have worked in Fortune 500 companies, but you choose to work with smaller companies. Why is
Correct.
that?
I started out with in a Fortune 50 company. I worked for a couple of those for the first about 10 years of my career. During that time, I had the experience of bringing on some outside people to work with us and do some projects and really liked the culture and the impact that they had. And some friends of mine joined a .com many, many years ago, back in the .com boom, and I decided to join them. And I fell in love with small business. You can pivot, you can be responsive. When you're there, you have an impact that you can't see that you can have in a large company like that. And I just loved it. And I think the small businesses, they're the lifeblood of our communities. In aggregate, small businesses hire more people in the U.S. than large companies do. So the impact and the reach of small businesses is huge.
Well, Cary, we share a similar background. I work for a large company, but I choose to work with smaller companies in large part for the reasons that you just kind of mentioned. Your focus in working with companies is primarily operational and, more importantly, help them kind of understand the mechanics of running the business. Can we kind of tease out a little bit about those roles? And I may be mischaracterizing you. I introduce you as someone who can help with operational methodology, and also someone that if they choose, they might choose to use you as a fractional COO. Is that a correct characterization?
It is. And I started this business about 8 years ago, focusing purely on the fractional operations piece. That's where my expertise was. I had been the COO for small businesses for about 15 years and decided to take that to a larger audience and help small businesses that didn't have the same opportunities that I had for growth and learning and expertise. As I did that more and more, I found that the areas that I enjoyed the most and felt like I had the best impact with my clients was really working on the strategy piece. Whether that's strategy development or execution, that's where I enjoy. So I've narrowed my focus to doing that. And then having worked with multiple clients and different operating systems, been exposed to a lot of different ways that people do the strategic planning and development. And System and Soul really resonated with me because it does the systems and the processes, but also really focuses on the people and the culture. And it's rare to find something that can do both of those. And I like doing that piece of it because it's really all encompassing. People don't go to small business because it's their only option. They do it because they want to be in a small business. Small business, especially small business founders, it's a tough job. It can be a lonely job. And if I can be a resource to help them reach their goals, whatever those goals are, personal or professional, that's what really makes me happy. So I really focus on that element of it. I am probably doing more of the system install coaching now than I am doing the fractional work. But what I found is I have to meet my clients where they are. They're coming to me because they have a challenge and they don't necessarily know what the solution to that challenge is. And sometimes we have some things we need to fix first from an operations standpoint just to get beyond the clutter so we can then have the bandwidth and the clarity to go build and execute a strategic plan. So sometimes my clients are a mix of both fractional COO and strategic planning. Sometimes they're one or the other.
Mm. It makes a lot of sense. I like to go back to small business. Over these years that I've been hosting this podcast, I have found that people misunderstand the term small business. They think of just mom and pop. Small business, as defined by the Small Business Administration, means that these businesses are much larger. When you describe a small business, kind of help quantify that. What constitutes, how big can you get and still be small? I guess is the question.
Yeah. So I'll answer that in a couple of ways. So I like to focus on the clients that have somewhere between 10 to 250 employees. Revenue is not as important to me as that count, but usually that's somewhere in the couple of $1 million plus in terms of top line revenue. And that's where I tend to narrow my focus to. They're all privately held. I'm industry agnostic because most small businesses have the same issues. Um, there is a lot of question. What is a small business versus a large business versus a mid-sized business? And I remember in my Vistage group many years ago, we talked about that. And there's sort of the idea that you have a lot of resources focused on small business that is, below say 25 or $30 million. And the large businesses are $100 million plus in revenue. Then you have that no man's land where you're either a large small business or a small large business. And that's probably the area that is the type of client that is probably struggling the most for their own definition, their own specialized resources, because they are kind of bridging that gap.
Here, you like me enjoy working with company founders. There's something about in their DNA. They went and started a business. And when that business succeeds, and for that matter, even thrives, it presents a whole new set of kind of issues. Speak a little bit. You choose to work with organizations, and I thought it was interesting. You quantified it more by employee count than revenue, but
Mhm.
managing an organization with 50 compared to 100 employees, compared to 100, it's not a linear progression in terms of complexity, is it?
It's not. I mean, just think about if you had 5 people and you drew them, you put five dots in a circle, And if you drew all the lines connecting them, and then you double that to 10 and drew all the lines connecting them, that's the different paths of the communication that you can have. And it doesn't just double, it increases exponentially the larger you get. And that's why you have to take a look at the structure and the process and the communications to make sure people know what their role is, who they're impacting. I use the analogy quite frequently of a knowledge factory or assembly line, because you as an individual or as a department or a group are getting some inputs, whether it's physical or intellectual. You're doing something with those and then moving them on. So you have inputs and outputs. So that's true with knowledge and data as well as physical things. And understanding what that looks like and what those impacts are is really critical.
You mentioned that you were looking for kind of an approach, a framework that kind of embraced. And it's in our conversation in preparation for this episode that I was really introduced to System and Soul. And when you think about it, now that I know the context, it makes sense. But if you would, help us better understand those two elements of System and Soul.
Certainly. The system part's probably easy. I think most people are familiar with that. It is the tools, and it's the structure, and it's the process that you use to run your business. And it's not just the processes of developing your strategic plan, it's the processes of actually running your business, right? You have all those different processes that you follow and you document. And a lot of people, and my profession, operations, is very guilty of focusing on documentation and process and software, all those things to make it run. But you know what? It takes people to run it. There is a culture that's either intentional or unintentional that you have developed in your business. There are values that you need to live by and use to make decisions. And all of those things are much more softer skills. That's the soul side of the business. It's that developing people, developing culture, building those values that really resonated with me when I found System and Soul.
Let's go through each in turn. I know that there are a lot of system methodologies out there. What is it about the System and Soul methodology from a system standpoint that appeals to you?
First of all, it's very understandable. The language is not complex. And we use terms that are going to be very familiar to you. It was developed by some guys who I think highly I've known for many years. And they've been serial entrepreneurs. And they've seen firsthand what works in their businesses. And they've used some of the other operating systems. And they said, let's cut away the stuff that doesn't make sense. Let's amplify what does, and let's fill in the gaps. And that really resonated with me when I first started talking with them about what their process looked like. They didn't tell me why they built it. I told them what I was looking for and what I saw as being the need in the industry is what they built. And that's why it resonated with me. So I love that, being very sound on the systems, but not ignoring the other side of the business.
Let's talk about the other side. I'm a little bit intrigued by the term soul. Because it connotes a lot of different things. When you went to these folks and said, this is what I'm looking for, and it checked the boxes from a system standpoint, what boxes did it check from a soul standpoint?
So when I started my career as a fractional COO, I kind of created my own way of doing strategic planning. And I had the concept of company DNA. That's who we are, what makes us different, what are our values, all of those things. To me, that is the most important thing that you have to define first before you do anything else. If you want to build a sustainable culture and attract people to come work with you and for you, and to identify the clients that need to buy from you. Because you have competitors, what makes you stand apart? And that really is important to me, understanding what makes us different. And then the whole values conversation, and we use in System and Soul, we call it the culture equation. So yes, we have values, and most companies, when I work with them, they have values stated already. I challenge them to rethink those values. How can we make them unique? I tell everybody, if you say our values are honesty, integrity, and customer first, I'm going to ask you, well, who doesn't have those? To me, that's a low bar of entry. Let's refine those. Let's make them unique to us. Let's really hone in on what makes us unique. What are our values? And then you have, culture. And I tell people that if you don't understand culture, think about it this way. If you were to read a Glassdoor review about your business from one of your current or previous employees, what would you hope that it said? And that is the culture you're trying to create. Well, something has to bridge the values and culture. And that's the organizational habits. Those are the things that we do together. And those can be whatever resonates with you. It could be something like we have a monthly social. It could be that we do, once a year, we do a Habitat for Humanity build. It could be very external or activity focused. It could be something more of day to day, like we always ask each other hard questions, or we embrace feedback, or we celebrate wins. Whatever those things you do together collectively as a team that helps reinforce those values, that's what builds the culture. And it takes all three of those things to have a healthy organization and for you to be intentional to work on maintaining those things.
Did you call those habits?
Organizational habits. So
I love that.
values plus organizational habits equals culture.
Of those three, when you're working with clients, what of those three do you find that the organization might struggle with most?
I will say there's really two things. They usually are pretty clear on what culture they want. We may help refine it and pick better words that are more descriptive or more definitive. Sometimes they struggle to identify the organizational habits because they do them almost automatically, and getting to identify that those things are part of what makes them who they are is a little bit eye-opening. And sometimes people are pretty ingrained. We love our values. Okay, but let's really dig in. Are they really the values? Are they aspirational? Do they really exist in the organization? Are they unintentional? Have they outlived their prime? Has the organization grown and changed so much that you need to relook at those? So getting people to kind of break out and look at their business with fresh eyes on those two elements can be a challenge.
You have brought the term up, differentiation, on at least two occasions thus far in this conversation. Is that something that you just naturally look at, or is that something that Systems and Soul encourages you to help your clients focus on?
It has been part of what I've done since I started helping other clients. Every business has competitors, and there has to be a reason why somebody's going to buy from you rather than your competitor down the street. If you're an employee and you're bringing on team members, there has to be a reason why people choose to work with you over somebody else. Those are very important to me. And we spend a lot of time on that in the System and Soul process, because you need to understand who are you trying to attract and how do you capitalize on what makes you different so you can go reach your goals.
This is very interesting, Cary. As I'm thinking about your target audience for your practice, you choose to work with a certain size organization that's a pretty broad sweet spot. It's even broader when you say that the kinds of things that you're talking about are not dependent on any given industry. For those who are listening, let's assume that these are business owners or business leaders. What might be the kinds of problems that they're dealing with that would warrant reaching out to you?
So let's take that from the business owner's perspective.
Okay.
And I love my business owners and my founders. They're visionaries. They're willing to take risks. A lot of them just have a magnetic personality. They attract people to what they want to do. But they're not always the best, most disciplined executors in the day to day. That's not how they're built, how they're wired. Now, they have to do that at the beginning because the team is small and it requires them doing both. But at some point, they will get tired of that. And when you start seeing the fact that I'm spending too much time away from my family, I'm not able to enjoy the business that I built. I'm too in the weeds. They also, funny enough, they tend to shy away from the word accountability. They don't like holding people accountable or don't know how to hold people accountable.
Hmm.
So when I start hearing issues like that, to me, those are like, okay, we have some challenges here. We're going through the stages of growth and we need to go from a small entrepreneurial, everybody knows that everybody's doing, to a professionally managed firm. And there are phases you have to go through for that. And that's where I like to step in and help give some clarity on, okay, how can we take whatever chaos you're feeling right now, whatever symptoms you're feeling, identify what's causing those things, and let's find a way to work ourselves out of those.
Here, do you prefer to work with growing companies?
I think most companies are growing. I mean, it's rare that you have a company that we're done growing. We're go we're here. But there are companies that are lifestyle businesses. They're not looking to aggressively grow 20% year over year. That's not who they want to be, and I'm happy to work with those. And what I usually find, if you have a client that's more of a lifestyle, they're probably looking for a future exit, and they want to prepare for that. They want to maximize that value and that potential. And what is one of the key things you need to do there is to make the business not dependent upon the owner. And if we put a strong leadership team in place with a process for managing and running the business and doing the day to day, you can show that the company is not highly dependent upon that individual. And that's going to increase their likelihood of a future transaction and help increase the valuations.
I have brought on to this podcast some experts on exit strategy, and it usually reduced to a sentence is you put the right team in place to prepare. I've recently worked with a business owner who was preparing to sell the business, but didn't know how to prepare himself to exit.
Yeah.
And in our work together, I came to a kind of renewed appreciation of how challenging that can be for a business founder in particular.
Mhm.
Even if they have good disciplined processes that Cary's introduced, and they've got a clear understanding of who they are and the customers they're going after, and they're growing, letting go can be a challenge in of itself. Have you encountered that?
100%. Um, you think about somebody who took the risk and founded a business, so much of their life and who they are, their identity and what they do is wrapped up in that business, especially if your name is on the business, right? It's so hard to, and I'm not going to use the word walk away, 'cause you're not trying to walk away. You're trying to build something that's going to outlive and create a legacy for you. So yeah, I think you have to look at it in that lens, like what can I do to make sure that this thing that I've created, this living, breathing thing that I've created is going to continue without my constant nurturing. As long as they're still there in the business, they can be that visionary. That can be that the guiding light. People looking at the where are we going to go? They don't have to be there in the day to day. And just to follow up to the first part of your question, when I have a founder that is looking for an exit down the road, I start challenging them immediately to say, what are you going to do when you hand the keys to the building over to somebody else? What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Because you've had purpose, you've had a sense of something. You need to know what that's going to look like beforehand. Otherwise, you're going to be lost.
That's well said. When I introduce you as in part being a fractional COO, I made maybe a wrong assumption, but it could be that it would seem to be that an organization might bring in a fractional COO because something's not working.
Mhm.
At the same time, there's a flip of that. And that is, it could be, it is working, but there's a limited bandwidth.
Yeah.
And so as we go back to the decision maker who would say, I want to reach out to Cary and learn a little bit more. What is it about Cary? What is it about System and Soul that differentiates you from the other folks doing similar work?
Well, I think the fact that I've got the ability to be a fractional resource as well as a business coach in System and Soul, I can go back to meeting them where they are, and I can do what I need to do. I have a lot of flexibility to use the tools how I want to use them to help them reach their goals.
And keeping with the theme of this podcast, inevitably you are working with clients who either individually or organizationally found themselves stuck.
Yeah.
And you think of a situation where you helped them get unstuck.
I can, and I'll answer that two ways. I think people understand a little bit more about business coaching and strategic planning and how I play into that. And the values I bring there, and we worked with some common clients, Mike, asking hard questions, not being afraid to challenge, not being afraid to shepherd the group through difficult conversations. I love doing that, and that to me is one of the things that just brings me a lot of joy to be able to help a team coalesce around ideas and challenge each other. Um, to answer the other question, in another way, using fractional COO work, I had a longtime client and friend, very successful business, but they had some challenges. They needed to change their marketing. They needed to redo some of their digital assets. They needed to automate some billing processes. They needed to automate some reporting and some tools that their team was using, and they didn't have anybody to run point on those things. So we were just having a conversation. We're having breakfast one day, and he was talking about those things. I said, "Well, I'm happy to help you." So I'm not a marketing expert, but I helped him identify what the marketing needs were. Then I helped him find the potential vendors that could potentially help us, the different marketing firms. And then I was the project manager for helping lead those marketing efforts. And I'm continuing to do that today, working hand in hand with a long-term marketing firm that we've been running a digital marketing program that's been expanding over the years for quite a while now. And then went through two different software definitions, like what do they need to replace the outdated manual analog methods that they're using today? How can we shorten the time frame to bill and to collect money and to remit payments and do reports? I did two efforts to define the scope of those projects. Again, find the vendors and act as his project manager for implementation of those things.
Cary, I don't know if I said this to you offline, but you made reference to we share a mutual client as an example. And here's what struck me. Your focus and my focus are very different.
Mm-hmm.
When an organization opens themselves to outside folks coming in, sometimes they can get mixed messages. What I found so comforting is that when issues arose, they might ask my opinion, they might ask your opinion independently, but more often than not, we are offering the same guidance. And that's unusual. But here's what that did for me, Cary. It says, I know that Cary is serving the client with the same degree of desire as I am, what's best for the client. But what also I found with you, Cary, is that you don't sugarcoat. You speak plainly in a way that's easy to understand. And so I can see why you have been drawn to System and Soul, because some of these concepts, particularly on the soul side, are a little bit hard to pin down. It might feel a little squishy. And I don't think anybody would accuse you of being squishy or touchy-feely per se. But I just see what you're doing and how you're doing it, how that kind of comes together. You've been doing this for some time now.
Right.
If you were to look out into the future, what do you feel are kind of the biggest challenges that small business leaders are going to be facing in the coming next few years?
And the landscape has really changed. If you go back to when I started the business in 2017 versus now, we've lived through a pandemic. We've lived through remote hybrid work. We've lived through the challenges of finding good people. We've seen interest rates rising. All those things have just made the business environment tough. The competition is stronger. The the cushion that you may have had in the past may not be there anymore. The risk of making bad decisions is probably more prevalent than it was in the past. So I think you're going to see those themes continue. Finding and keeping good people, keeping them engaged, and I think making sure that they're there for the right reasons. And that's something we talk about in System and Soul. System and Soul is about strategy, execution, right? It starts with a vision, and understanding who you are and why you exist is the most important thing. And I have to get my clients to be able to articulate and define that first and foremost. Because having a purpose and having people that believe in that purpose is huge. So helping clients do that is really important. Then we take the strategic plan, which helps them, it turns that vision into execution. So having the right people, having that vision, that is huge. If I can solve one problem with my clients, is be able to articulate who they are, why they exist, and where they're going, they're going to be in a better place.
You created a bridge in my mind that I didn't have at the beginning of this conversation, and that is, it's one thing to have a plan. It could be entirely different thing to be able to execute on that plan.
Oh, yes.
And what I hear is, if the foundation is established correctly, you've got a clear idea of where you want to go, everything that you're doing from that point forward is not only aligned, but it's intended to go and accomplish those things in a way that people can step back and attribute their continuous success to the discipline that you're introducing.
Right. I mean, we start off when I first work with the client on System and Soul, I start off teaching them tools that we're going to use to execute this plan that they're going to create. So we learn the tools first. Day one, we learn tools and we start practicing using them. Then on day 2 and 3, we build out our strategic plan. And then we have a cadence of talking about working on the business, not in the business, for 60 to 90 minutes a week. And we make sure that we're talking about what we're working on, that we're moving towards our goals. We're using all these things that we built as filters to make good business decisions, that we're looking at the different things and the different departments and how they're working. And you've heard it said many times, what gets measured gets managed. Well, let's make sure we're measuring the right things, that everybody knows how they're being measured. Add that clarity. And all those tools together will help you sustain a vision and a strategic plan. The worst thing is to create a strategic plan and it gets dusty sitting on a shelf, or it's not shared with your team. We have to have one that's living, dynamic, breathing, it's understood, and it's used as a tool to build the business.
Cary, as we wrap up, I would like to ask you if you could share one actionable insight. That is, what might be one step that small business leaders can take today that begins kind of aligning their systems with their vision for long-term success?
It's funny. I just did a series for LinkedIn, top 10 tips for making 2025 your best year ever. And I'm going to borrow from that because it's up fresh on my mind. The number one thing you can do is to have a plan. Because if you don't have a destination, any road will get you there. There's I've heard this example. I don't know if it's apocryphal or if it's true, but a professor standing in front of a college, lecture hall gave every student a ping pong ball. and told them to throw it. And they did. And the balls went everywhere. They're throwing them at each other, throwing them at the walls, throwing them at him. Then he gave everybody another ping pong ball. And he drew a target in the front of the room. He said, hit the target. And they all threw the target, the ball towards the target. Now, some of them hit it. Some of them got close. Some of them, whatever. But the idea is if you have a destination, you have a vision, you have a plan, you have a goal, you can get people aligned and working towards it. And if you don't have the basics and you're not able to articulate to your team what's in your head, I would start with try to figure that out today.
Excellent. Before we close, I have a question for our listeners to reflect on. And that is your leadership empowering your team and your business to thrive? Or are you caught in the same cycles without breakthrough progress? True leadership begins with clarity and purpose, and it grows through intention and thrives on resilience and adaptability. Folks know I'm an executive coach, and my role is to guide leaders in cultivating the clarity, the confidence, and the strategy needed to inspire their teams and achieve meaningful, lasting results. At Bench Builders, we specialize in helping leaders unlock their full potential and create impact through actionable insights and proven strategies. So if you're ready to elevate your leadership, visit bench-builders.com and explore how we can perhaps help you on that journey. Cary, thank you again for sharing all this invaluable expertise. For the listeners who want to learn more about your work or to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
They're certainly welcome to visit my website. It's opalpg.com. It stands for Opal Partners Group. And you can find me on the web there, and there's a contact form they can fill out, or they can certainly reach out to me at info@opalpg.com or call me at 678-845-6141.
Excellent. We will include that information in the show notes. And I also want to finally give a big thank you to all the subscribers for tuning in. And I hope that today's conversation about System and Soul will provide you with actionable strategies to help you get unstuck and on target. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Get Unstuck and On Target. I hope you've gained insights to help you lead with confidence and drive your organization forward. Remember, at Bench Builders, we're committed to your success, your leadership excellence, and your strategic growth. If you've enjoyed our conversation today, please leave a review, rate, and subscribe to keep up with our latest episodes. This show really grows when listeners like you share it with others. Who do you know who needs to hear what we talked about today? Until next time, I encourage you to stay focused on the target and continue to break new ground on your leadership path.